Hi and welcome to this latest little video tutorial to support the SketchUp for Garden Designers course we're running at the minute. One or two of you have asked how we might use SketchUp for drawing kind of 2D plans. Essentially SketchUp was designed as a 3D modelling tool, and you can use it to draw 2D plans. It has one or two problems with it, but it is a very accessible way of drawing drawing those kind of plans. It's kind of flexibility for production of plans and elevations and the likes has been vastly improved with the production or the use of its layout application, which is part of the full package, which we're not running here because we're just really trying to get used to the basics. So without further ado, we're going to show you how we can use it to draw a basic 2D plan. Also along the way we're going to cover one or two concepts which we did in the session around the use of layers and groups, and how we might modify the toolbar to introduce one or two new tools. So let's start and let's do the tool bit first. Now what you'll notice is obviously now I've got a blank screen. On the top here I've added a couple of tools. I've added a text tool and a dimension tool, which you probably haven't got. Now in the past previously we were selecting those in two different ways. We could select them as tools, we could go to tools, and we could select the tape measure if we wanted to, which is obviously that one there, the ruler. We could select dimensions here, and we could select text there. That would be one option. We also use the full tools palette, because if you remember, which takes a rather lot of space. So if there are tools we know we're going to be using a lot, or that we're going to specifically be using for a short period of time but quite frequently, a way to adapt them is to customize your toolbar. So if we go to edit, we go to view, and we customize the toolbar, we come up with a palette here. Now what we want to do is we want to add two tools, the text and the dimension tool. And obviously I've already got them added, so I'm just going to go through the process to show you. I'm going to get that text tool and I'm going to put it up there, and that's going to return it. That's there. Now if I want to get rid of it, I could drag it back and just drop it in there, and it's gone. Same with dimension tool, I can drop it back there. As I said, we wanted to add them, so we'll select dimension toolbar, we'll take it up and we'll just pop it into that space. Try again, actually have to drag it a bit further this time. So we've added dimension tool, we're going to add that text toolbar. Now it might be there's one or two others you want to add, and certainly as you kind of use it more, you'll find your favourite tools to suit the way you like to work. We've got the orbit toolbar added. That's certainly probably a standard one. Zoom extents I think I added perhaps in the last tutorial session, so you could add that one. That's useful to see the whole of the drawing area. That's probably enough for now, so we'll close that down having added those toolbars. One of the other things we did start to cover for those who were at session 2, remember we did start to talk about layers, and layers are a way of controlling what we see on the screen at any one time. It's a bit like layers of tracing paper, I suppose, and they allow us to control visibility of certain things, certain objects we create within the overall finished picture. So just to briefly introduce layers, what we need to do is we need to pull up a couple of windows. So if we go to window, two I usually have open, or at least active, are entity info, so I'll open that, and then I'll go to window also, and layers. Now they may not have come in as they have on mine, because I use them regularly, and that's where they just drop into by default. Yours might be somewhere else on the screen, in which case you can just pick them up by that top, and you can drag them and they'll click into place. They're kind of intelligently locked to one another. Also, if you're drawing and you find they're in the way, you can click on them and it just kind of minimises them. They're there. You just click back on it and it comes up, and if you do that, it kind of auto adjusts just to reduce the size. Now I know I'm going to be using one or two layers in this exercise we're going to do, so I'm going to create those layers now. So I'm going to hit this plus button on the layers command, and it's created a new layer called layer 1, and I want to rename that, so I'm just going to call that house. So I hit house and click away. I'm going to create another one called L-scape, short for landscape, L-scape, and I'm going to call that soft. So plus, I'm going to create L-scape 2, or L-scape even hard, so landscape, hard landscape. Hit the plus again. So I'm going to rename landscape 2, which we created as we went along there. And I'm going to just click on that. And I'm going to type trees. And I'm going to call these existing trees. Now, you might further refine this as you're doing the SketchUp. You might have some existing trees you want to retain, so you would put those on trees existing retained, or you might put them on a layer called trees existing remove if they were to go. That's just kind of part of your drawing discipline that you'll build up as to, through experience, as to how you bolt your drawing together to make it usable when you're producing your finished images. So as you can see, I've created a series of layers that I'm going to be using. I tend to always have layer 0 as my active, and I'll draw in layer 0 and then move things between layers afterwards to control the view. You've also got title page here, which you won't have, and that was, when I showed, that's kind of that title page we saw at the introduction, Green Sea Design, basic site plan. So we don't want that now, and actually that's controlled using these scene commands, which we'll come to in later sessions. So we can start drawing now. Now you should have, or you would have been emailed a PDF or a JPEG of the site plan. Now the overall site extents is 11 metres long by 6.5 metres wide. So we're going to draw that first. We're going to click that rectangle tool. We're going to go down to the origin. Now we're drawing in layer 0 because that's our active layer. And I'm just going to drag it out, and then I'm going to type 6,500, 11,000. One more 0, 11,000. There we have the site. What I'll probably do actually is I'll probably create another layer and call that site extents or extents, just to make things a bit easier, so we can keep layer 0 on when we're drawing, and not have some of the interference that you probably see will happen as we start to draw other parts of the plan. But before we do that, we're going to briefly mention groups. You're all familiar, I think, from when we created roofs, the idea of drawing a rectangle and then drawing a line up the middle of it. And when we would select that middle line, we would lift it using the move tool, and when we lift it, we create something that starts to look like the apex of a roof. Now that's fine if we want to do that, but there's other times we don't want to do that. We might want to be layering objects over one another or next to one another, such that they don't interfere with other elements in and around them. So with that, I'm just going to delete that, so you can either hit delete having selected it, or backspace on the Mac. I'm going to create a group, so I'm going to drag up what we call a selection marquee. It's just a box using the pointer tool over all the things I want to select. So select, drag it around, I'm going to go edit, I'm going to go make group. So now I have a group. If you notice, when I click on it, I can't click just on one of the perimeter lines or just the centre space. The whole thing becomes highlighted. It's now treated, in this view at least, as one entity. If I double click on it, I open it. Now I can select the surface, or I can select the edges. It's a pretty powerful device. If I double click away, we're back to selecting the group. So now if I draw a line, you'll see that this line, when it's moved, shouldn't, if I've done it correctly, it shouldn't actually affect the rectangle below. So I've drawn my line again, I've selected it, I've hit the move command. Now this time when I lift it, bingo, there you go, I can move the line independently of the group. So don't need that line anymore. We've shown how groups can be used, at least in principle. So we'll delete that again, backspace for me on the Mac, delete on the PC or the eraser, whichever you find easiest. So I've selected, I've drawn this site extents. Actually, what I'll do is I will go back and add another layer. I'm just going to call it site extents. So site extents. Capital E in there. There you go. Well, what we've drawn is still sitting on layer 0. If you look at the entity information, it tells me it's a group. There's one in the model, it's just this one, and it's on layer 0. Well, actually I don't want it on layer 0, I want to put it on site extents. So I've selected it, it's on site extents. So now if I turn off the visibility of site extents, I no longer see it. Turn it back on, it's there. Right, so we're still drawing in layer 0. Now I want to draw the house. So if you look at your plan, you'll see that the left-hand edge of the house is 100 millimeters away from the left-hand edge of the site. So what I did there was I selected the ruler tool, clicked on that left-hand edge, dragged it across to anywhere, let go, and then I typed in the dimension in the control box down on the bottom right. So that's selected, that's set my left-hand edge of the house. So I can do that again now for the for the offset of the house from the bottom of the extent. This time we want a metre, so I've selected my ruler tool, I'm dragging it out anywhere, I'm going to release it, now I'm going to type in the 1000 and it will go back to 1000 metres off this bottom edge, so from there to there is a metre. This time we know the house is 5390 wide, so instead of selecting off the boundary of the site, I'm going to select off the previous ruler I dragged out, previous guide. So this time I'm going to select it out and I'm going to drop it at about 2.5 metres. Now I'm going to type in 5390 millimetres, and it's moved it out. So that's the guidelines to enable me to draw my house. So now I select my rectangle, I go down to that bottom left corner created by the guide on the edge of the site. I click with the left button and I drag out. Here we go, we've now created a rectangle that's got a face and it's got some edges. And that is the house. So I'm going to select that, I'm going to right click, select bounding edges, and I'm going to make that into a group. So that's now a group, and it's now a group. As previously, it's sitting on layer 0. Well, that's going to be the house, so I'm going to change its layer. I'm going to put that on house, push that up there, pop that onto house. So I've now created the house. Could have created that more simple. I'm sure some of you will have thought, well, why do you create 3 guides? Really, 3 guides just to demonstrate the process. Of course, I could have just created one guide here, started my rectangle at that point, dragged it out, and then typed in my X and Y values for the house. How you draw really is up to you, and you'll develop your own style as to what suits you and for individual purposes. So what I'll do now is I'll draw the patio. I don't think on the patio we've got the dimension of the kind of the length of the patio from the base of, or from the bottom of this site extent up to its offset off the building. Now I know its offset off the building is 2.4 metres. So in this case what I'm going to do is I'm just going to define using the ruler. I'm going to use the ruler again. I'm going to drag it across and I'm going to define the left hand edge of the patio, which is 300 off the boundary. So I've dragged my ruler out, dropped it anywhere, and then I've gone down to that bottom right hand box, typed in the 300, and there we go. So now I can start to draw in my patio. I've got that point. I know it butts up to the house, so I'm going to select that point with the pencil, and I'm going to go out along the green axis and following the guideline there on the line 2400. Click return. I'm still drawing there, so I'm going to follow the red line across, and I'm going to go right the way over to that axis. I'm going to go to the edge of the group, that's edge of the site extent. I'm just going to keep tracing round until I get back to where I started, tracing round the house, come back. So now we have the group that was the house, so we could turn that off. And what we see now is we see the object that is the patio. Again, I'm going to select the middle, I'm going to right click, select bounding edges, and then I'm going to edit, make group. Again, here you see you could use a shortcut for me, Command G. Should show you for your Windows users, PC users, these shortcuts in your case. So we'll make that a group. Let's just edit, undo that group. Undo group, it's select bounding edges. Edit, make group. Seems as if it's sharing a common edge with the house. Let's just turn off the site extent and have a look what's going on. We've got something on the group on house which we can turn off. We've also got this group, there you go, sorry. We've got this group which we've created, which is still on layer 0. We want that to be on hard landscaping, so we're going to change that to landscape hard. There we go. So now we've created these two things. We've got landscape hard, which is, it says the patio, and we've got the house, which we can click back on. So if we click on the site extent, before we do that, we'll start, and we'll click it back on. Click on the site extent. So now we can see what we've created. We're going to start to colour this up, and we could use various materials or colours to illustrate what's going on. So we hit the paint bucket, and we're going to think, well, what could we put on for the house? Let's say, what house probably okay as it is, but if we go to the patio, we've got some options here. We could look at using one of these asphalt or concrete patterns. So we could click fairly ugly looking set. We could go for, I don't know, I'll go for that one. Some sort of block. We click on it and we drop it onto. There you go. You see, it's the patio is now selected. If we turn off the site extents, you can see the patio's taken that texture. It's kind of a settee block texture. Turn it back on. What we're getting is a bit of interference because within SketchUp, that's just cured it. But if we come out again, it's going to lose it. What's happening is we've essentially drawn two objects which occupy the same space horizontally, and within the view on the screen they're kind of fighting at any one time for supremacy within the view. In a CAD package we would have the ability to stack these in a certain order, and this wouldn't be a problem. Within SketchUp it's only an issue here. We can work around it. What we'll do is we could, if we really had to, we could kind of stack, we could lift this. In fact, I'll show you. We could lift the patio up slightly so I can select it. If I just move it up by, in fact, I've just moved it up by 5 millimeters. I've moved it up quite a way. I'll type in my 5, hit return. There you go. And now it's got supremacy. As I scroll in and out, that patio area is now sitting above the site extent, so we always see it above. Let's just undo that. So Command Z for me. There you go. You see it's struggling. But of course, we've drawn the site extents and tracing. We can actually simply get away from that by turning off site extents, and then we don't see it. So there you go. We've started to create the basis of a site plan, and you can use that procedure to continue tracing around, putting in guidelines where you need them, and drawing in the objects, either using the rectangle tools, adding them and subtracting them, or just tracing using the line tool around your guides and using a combination of that and measure type dimensions. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to show you then how we can add some dimensions and text to that. But what I'll do is I'll just change the site extents. Well, it's a bit early because we haven't created the lawn, but we'll show you if you could select vegetation. So you could select some vegetation, you could drop that onto your site extent, so that could be a lawn. We'll close that down now so you can play with that at your heart's content. We're going to add a few dimensions. So to do that and text, we're going to go to basically the top view. So we'll go to Camera, Standard Views, Top. Right, now what's happening here, of course, is that we can't actually see the patio because because the site extent is wanting to sit above it. Let's click away. If we click on that, we'll turn that off for what we're doing. We'll get rid of site extents. There we go. So we can see something that's the house. We might make that a bit darker, so we'll go to the paint bucket palette, and we'll select some colours. So just go to colours. We'll select a pretty dark colour for the house, and we'll drop that into there. So that's the house. Close that down again. So I'm going to show you how we add some dimensions. We can select the dimension tool here, and we can click on that point, we can click on that point, and we can drag it out, 3,400. It might be, when you do that, you're not happy with your dimensions, you might be getting some 0.00, getting some sort of higher precision that you don't necessarily want with those dimensions. The way to control that is to go to Window, go to Model Info, and here you can see my precision is set to 0. If I was to change that and go to 0.00, click away, you'll see what's happened to that dimension is it's now added on the extra level of precision to tenths, hundredths of millimetres. So I don't want that, so we'll go back to 0. So that's the way of controlling that. There's obviously things in here you can play with in terms of your standard texts and how things react. So we've added dimension 3,400 off that, what was the baseline. So then what do we need to do? Then we start to think, well actually we're going to give you some text, weren't we? Two ways we can easily use text. We can use text, we click that text bar, toolbar we added, tool we added. We can click on it, we can drag it out, And we then start to create something that's got what they call a leader line, a dimension line. It's a leader line because it's a text. And here we could type in patio. And we click off. And there it is, we've selected patio and we've drawn a line to it. Of course, sometimes we might not want to have it on the leader line, we might want to have it different. So we can double click on that. We don't have the leader line at this point, and we just type in patio. And then again we click away and we've created patio. We can edit that. We can look at it again. So we've selected it. We know, and we look at its entity info. We can see it's on layer 0. And what I'd normally do, certainly, ideally before you start doing text, is I'd create a text layer, and I probably would at that point. I'd select the text layer as my active layer, and I'd put all the text on one layer, and I'd create another layer also for dimensions and put the dimensions on one layer. So that's something you can do and have a play with. But we've selected the text, and here we can see we've got it's on layer 0, it's Tahoma, it's 12 points, where we can select on font, and we can start to, again, we can play with that to suit what we're doing. I always tend to use Arial, but obviously you might want to be a little bit more creative in your choice of fonts, so we might go to 18. It starts to become a bit more visible. So there you go, we can start to draw the site plan. We modified a few tools. We've added the dimension toolbar and the text toolbar from customized tool palettes. We've had to go at putting some materials on which you can play with, and you can really just carry on and do the rest of that basic site plan PDF, see what you come up with. If you get so far, you can always have a go at exporting it. You can go File, Export. You can export a 2D graphic and email it to me if you want. Let me know if you've got any problems. See if we can help you with it. I think perhaps the other bit of information you didn't have was regarding the tree. Yeah, I think the tree wasn't there. So we close that text. Don't think I gave dimensions. Let's just turn on that site extents. We click onto the visibility button. There it is. You can draw, once you've got this reference layer, you can pretty much draw your site plan from this top viewpoint. You have to be careful though. If you're doing it, if you may recall, I think when in the first session, we tried to draw in this top viewport, just doing some random lines and trying to join them up. They won't always be drawn in the same plane, so they might not come back together. But so long as what you're drawing says it's on the plane of this reference layer, this site extent, this thing should join up. I still, in SketchUp, pretty much always draw in something like the ISO view, the right view. So bear with me. Standard views, let's just go for the ISO, not the right side. I will draw in something like this. What you don't have is you don't have the position of that tree, so I'll quickly give you a couple of guides. So I think it was 1.5 meters from the top, so drag the guide out, type in 1500, drag the guide out from the side, 1500. So you can start to think about creating the tree. You can drag your circle. I said it's 2 meters in radius, so if we want to go for 2000 there, that starts to create that. Now within that I've got a trunk I'm going to draw, and I'm just going to draw that. So let's say it's 150 diameter, radius, yeah, 150 radius, let's say. So we'll just type in 150 there. So we've got 2 concentric circles. One's going to be the trunk, one's going to be the spread. I'm going to turn off my site extent because I don't need that. I've drawn this tree, so what I'll do is I'll look at that and think, right, well that's not a good colour for tree, so we'll hit that. We could go for a vegetation colour, we could be as creative as we want, but I'm just going to drag a kind of greeny colour down and paint my tree green. So there you see I've got a green canopy and I've got this grey trunk. You can play with it your heart's content. I'm going to select it all, select those targets, so I'm going to make them into a group, edit. Before I do that, you'll notice that there's 50 entities. Now that's 50 entities are formed by the straight lines that tightly drawn, which make up the radius of the curve. So you've got quite a lot of entities there. It's not one curve, it's a series of straight lines that are faceted that appear as a curve. And you can control that, and we'll perhaps look at that in another session if you remind me. But anyway, so I've created them. I'm just going to hit the shortcut Command G. I've created a group. it's on layer 0. Now what I want to do is I want to put this on trees existing. So here you go, trees existing, there it is. It's going to give you the position, wasn't I? So let's just turn that back on. Yeah, we'll turn that back on. We'll give you a couple of dimensions to it. Probably call it, so it's 1500. So I'm going to select down there. I'm going to select the centre of the group. I'll drag it out. There you go. You see, you've got it at 1500. Do the same process from this corner. Just need to get in there and select that endpointing group. Hopefully that's got it. It hasn't got it now, so let's just be a little bit careful here. There you go. That's the central group. That's what we wanted. We select that corner. Drag to just creating it there. Let's just get rid of that. That's because what's happened is we moved that one inadvertently. So I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to select. I'm going to select that. So let's just, we're going to try selecting that. So what we'll do is, we'll create that dimensions layer. Let's just create that dimensions layer. So dimensions. Put it onto dimensions, we select that, entity info, and we can play, and here we could play with, if you like, the font and the size, we can make it bigger. We can play with the text, anything you want. But we're going to, essentially what we want to do is we'll put that onto the dimensions layer. So we select the dimensions. I'm going to turn off the dimensions layer now, so we get rid of the interference we were having. I'm going to reselect, I'm going to go to the endpoint in that group. I'm going to go to hopefully the centre of that group. Well, that's dragging out, that's got it, that's telling me it's 1500. So now I can select that. Let's just hit the space bar, get that pointer tool back using the shortcut. Shortcut for the pointer tool, remember, it should be a space bar. So we select it, we're going to put that onto dimensions. It'll disappear when we do so, and then we can turn dimensions back on. There you go, you've got a 1500 dimension, which you can't really read in that flowery writing, and in the more standard text you can read the 1500. So really have fun playing with drawing up your site plan, have fun with your textures. I think I've made mention of a fence. If you want to have a play, you could draw the fence. Obviously at that point you're looking to draw it vertically. You can draw it as a 2D object, you could as a rectangle, you could draw it on plan as, say, a 25mm wide strip, and then you could extrude it 1.8, let's say, up for a fence. You could even have a go at drawing in some fence posts. So really just have fun with it, use the skills we've been slowly building up just to build your confidence and see what you can produce. So that concludes this one. I think what I'll do is maybe in a couple of weeks' time, if you have a chance to get your head around this and play with it a bit, we'll look at how we draw into that drawing I emailed out to you, that imported DWG. So have fun, and we'll move on next time.